Hello, 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 my beautiful disruptors. I am so excited to be here tonight. We are talking about perfectionism. Perfectionism is just fear in heels, and we're going to be dismantling the lie that getting it right makes you worthy. If you have ever been told that you're driven, high achieving, always on it, but inside you feel like you're never enough, tonight is for you. Because we're going to blow the lid off one of the most exhausting survival strategies masked as ambition, and that is perfectionism. This isn't about neat planners and color coded calendars. This is about the little girl inside of you who decided somewhere along the way, if I just do everything right, maybe they'll love me. If I was perfect, maybe I won't get hurt. If I keep achieving, maybe I'll feel like I'm enough. And spoiler alert, that little girl doesn't need to be perfect. She doesn't need to feel, she just needs to feel safe. And oftentimes she didn't, and that's why she performed. And, you've probably been performing ever since. So if this is your first time joining me live, welcome. My name is Letitia. I am the Survival Mid Disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates unapologetic disruptive transformations for high achieving women who are ready to exit survival mode, and take radical ownership of our lives and their growth. And I love having conversations around the residual impact of trauma. I love having conversations about working through trauma, and getting out of survival mode. And if you've been rocking with me for a while, you know that. We don't do surface level healing over here. We go deep, we go raw, we get real uncomfortable in the name of truth transformation and disrupting every pattern that has kept us stuck. And I am just now trying to open the live, just to make sure that I can answer any questions that might come up because I missed a few last week. So, also, if this is your first time joining me, I try to make this as interactive as possible. So, I want you to interact in the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know that you understand. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will answer them as best I can. So, let's get started. Perfectionism is often the myth of good enough. It's We often label it as ambition, but it's really armor. It's a nervous system response to chronic emotional uncertainty. Because when you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where praise only came when you were doing something impressive, when punishment came fast and forgiveness came slow, when peace was only found when you were pleasing someone else, your body started equating performance to perfection. Sorry, performance with protection. Being the good girl wasn't just about getting gold stars, it was about survival. You knew if you got straight A's, they'll smile. If you didn't speak up, you wouldn't get yelled at. If you fixed everything, then maybe they wouldn't fall apart. So you built an identity around being impressive. And deep down, you've been drowning in the impossible expectations. Because even when you succeed, even when you over deliver, even when you check every damn box, it often still feels like it isn't enough. That's not because you're broken, and that's because your nervous system never learned how to feel safe and seen as you are. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at my phone just to make sure I'm not missing anything from the audience. So, again, let me know that you're here, you're watching, and you are feeling what I'm saying. So, one of the things that we learn as children is that praise is often a drug, or praise is often used as a drug, right? We often get addicted to praise as children because when we were little, when people only lit up when we achieved something, it wired us to chase that high, the reward, the promotion, the you're so strong. But that praise didn't give us peace. And now that we are adults, wondering why we can't rest without guilt, why we spiral when we make a mistake, why our self worth evaporates when we aren't being productive. It's not a mindset issue, it's a trauma imprint. You were taught that love had to be earned. So perfectionism, it becomes your currency. But here's the painful truth: when love has to be earned, safety is never guaranteed. And that's why no matter how much you do, your nervous system still feels like it's on edge. So, first of all, I want to stop calling perfectionism drive. Let's call it what it is. It is fear in a power suit. Perfectionism is the nervous system saying, if I mess up, I'll be rejected. If I fail, I'll be abandoned. If I'm not useful, I'll be forgotten. So we work harder, we overfunction, we never ask for help, and then we wonder why we're burnt out, bitter, and battling anxiety 3 o'clock in the morning. This is your brain in survival mode. It's trying to outwork the wound. But sis, healing doesn't happen through struggle. Healing happens through honesty, through softening, through letting go of the pressure to perform. And I'm always talking about performance whenever we have these discussions about survival mode, because often that is what we're doing. We are performing so that the outside world doesn't see that we are falling apart. So I want you to take out a piece of paper. I'm going to encourage you, if you're going to be joining these lives on a regular basis, bring a journal, bring your notes app, like just be ready to write, because I always give you things to ruminate on to help with your awareness. And if you've ever heard me talking about accident survival mode, I think it happens in three phases: self awareness, reprogramming, and reinvention. So in these lives, I really want to help you get the awareness that you need in order to start moving you out of survival mode. So I want you to sit with this, write it down, think about it, go back and ruminate and write it out again. What did you learn growing up about being good enough? What did you learn growing up about being good enough? Not what people said, what did they show you? Did you feel worthy only when you succeeded? Were you told you were too much? Were you made to feel invisible unless you were needed? I want you to write that down. I want that to land with you, because a huge part of our healing is being able to name our patterns. Um, that is often the first step in which we start to break our patterns. Perfectionism did not start with you. It was often passed on, programmed in, and praised. But it doesn't have to be a legacy, which is why we're discussing it today. You get to stop hustling for your worth. You get to be whole without being perfect. And now we're going to unpack um, the journey of release. and what that actually looks like, because healing isn't about doing more, it's about letting yourself be. So let's talk about the hidden damages of perfectionism. Oftentimes, we don't recognize the price of perfection. We don't recognize what perfectionism actually cost us. Earlier I've broken down where perfectionism came from. There's childhood survival imprints that need to earn love through performance. And your nervous system learns to hustle to stay safe. But now we're going to look at what perfectionism does to you, because it doesn't just make you polished, it makes you exhausted. It makes you anxious. It makes you disappear in your own life. And we're going to unpack the hidden damage you've probably been carrying for years and calling it ambition. So the first one that I want to make very clear is perfectionism is a form of self-abandonment. It's the slow erosion of your truth, your voice, your intuition, all sacrificed on the altar of being perceived as having it all together. Your silence, um, often you often silence yourself because you don't want to sound unsure. You don't ask for help because you don't want to look weak. So you triple check everything, you stay up later than you should, you redo things others would have let go, because you've built your entire sense of worth around performance. And I definitely did that. And I it took me starting my business to recognize that I was a perfectionist. I would stall myself in the weirdest ways, and it was really a fear of being seen, that I didn't have every box ticked and everything together. And I thought that if my ideal clients saw that, they wouldn't buy from me. So I put even more pressure on myself to have things all together. And I remember someone saying to me, done is better than perfect. And that is now the place that I live from, right? Because perfection is an illusion. And if we are anchored into that, we are essentially abandoning ourselves in the event that we don't reach that perfection. Because even when you're succeeding, you still feel like a fraud, right? Because you're not showing up as your real self. You're showing up as this curated version of you, one designed to protect and not express. So I want to ask you, how many times have you watered yourself down to seem more appropriate? Like, that was the core of who I was until I started healing. How many times have you avoided vulnerability because it doesn't match that strong woman narrative that you've been carrying for so long? That's not power. That's survival. That's self abandonment in heels and lip gloss. And sis, we're really not doing that anymore. Perfectionism is not sustainable. You are not built to be a machine. You are a human being with needs, limits, and emotions. But perfectionism tells you don't stop, don't break, don't feel. So what happens? You burn out. You overfunction until your body gives out. You wake up with anxiety, not because life's hard, but the pressure to stay flawless is suffocating. And the worst part, you feel guilty for needing rest. Like you had to earn your breath. Like slowing down makes you lazy. Like being seen in process, in healing, in mess is unacceptable. Shame is the echo of perfectionism. because no matter how much you do, it tells you it's never enough. And that's the real trauma loop. Hustle, burnout, shame, repeats. Hustle, burnout, shame, repeat. That's the cycle. That's what we do when we are stuck in perfectionism. So I just want to offer you a truth that might hit deep. You don't feel behind, you feel exposed. You're not panicking because you're failing. You're not panicking because, you know, things are incomplete. You're panicking because people finally see the cracks. You built this image that's so strong, so capable, so high functioning that the thought of someone seeing you overwhelmed and struggling feels like shame. So you keep performing. You keep depleting yourself. You keep crying in the shower. I know that's where I spent most of my time crying, even when you resent the very identity that you've built. Because perfectionism told you if you struggle, you're failing. You're not 10 steps ahead, you're falling behind. If if you let go of control, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, without falling apart, what's falling apart isn't your life. It's a version of you that never was allowed to be real. You're not behind. You're just waking up to the cost of hiding. And that awareness, that's your breakthrough moment. So I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to breathe. And here's a question that I want you to sit with tonight. What part of me is afraid to be seen unfinished? That's a deep question. And I really want you to spend some time thinking about that. I don't want you to rush it. Is it part of you that has always had to be the strong one? Is it the girl who was praised for being mature? Is it the woman who fears that she'll lose respect if she shows vulnerability? Whatever it is, I want you to write it out and I want you to let it be messy, because being seen in process isn't a flaw. It's really a flex, right? And I want you to know something. There is nothing wrong with you wanting to do well. I think we should all aspire to do well. But doing well doesn't mean disappearing in the process. That's not thriving, that's surviving. And as we go on, we're going to be talking about what it means to let go of without losing yourself. Because I think a lot of us are scared to rewrite our patterns because we think we're going to let go of who we are at the core. But perfectionism doesn't just shape your actions, it hijacks your identity. And you, my love, are more than your performance. You're enough even when you're messy, even when you're healing, even when you're seen. So now I want to move on to what it looks like to release the hustle for wholeness. I hope you're still with me. I hope you're feeling this, and I hope that what I'm saying is holding a mirror up to you, because you know, oftentimes we don't want to face the reality of the things that have become patterns for us. A huge part of survival mode is holding on to the hustle, holding on to these patterns, holding on to the narratives that we hold. But letting go of that hustle, it's not because you're lazy, it's not because you're tired, even though you probably are, but because deep down, hustle has become your identity. Productivity is how you've coped, right? Achievement is how you self-soothed. Oftentimes we get so caught up in what we have going on that we don't have time to process what's going on underneath the surface. um, doing often feels safer than being. And I don't know that I've talked about it in this space, but oftentimes we don't know how to be because we're all often focused on what's next. We don't know how to sit in the present. We're always looking to the future, or sometimes looking in the past to criticize ourselves. But I'm inviting you to trade in that hustle identity, not for failure, not for mediocrity, but for wholeness. So let's start with your nervous system, because this is not just about a mindset shift. This is biological. When you've lived in a state of hypervigilance, always doing, fixing, proving, it wires your nervous system for overfunctioning. You become addicted to being busy because stillness feels unsafe. And when you finally sit still, you feel anxious. Not because something's wrong, but because your body only knows how to feel worthy through motion. So you perform to stay needed, you overgive to avoid being abandoned, you achieve to outrun the shame, right? And that's how we get into that trauma loop. But presence, slowness, softness, breath, all of that doesn't mean that you're lazy. It means that you've finally gotten to a state of regulation. And one of the things that I have to do often with my clients is help them work on this reframe. Rest is not the reward, rest is the requirement. And you don't need to be exhausted to be worthy. You don't need to earn your right to exist through a to do list. You're not a productivity robot. You are a human being. So let's just break something down real quick, because many of us confuse excellence with obsession. Excellence says, I care, I'm intentional, I want to do my best. Obsession says, if it's not perfect, I'm a failure. If they're not clapping, I've done something wrong. If I stop grinding, I'll fall apart. And I've said this before, perfectionism hijacks us, right? It hijacks excellence and turns it into a panic response. You can be excellent without obsessing. You can take pride in your work without destroying your piece to get there. You can show up fully without losing yourself in performance. And I want you to ask yourself, write this down and ruminate on it again. Really spend some time with these questions. Am I doing this from a place of wholeness, or to avoid feeling unworthy? I want you to think about the things that you do and really consider, what is your motivation behind the way that you operate. Is it wholeness or avoiding that unworthiness? And oftentimes people don't recognize that we either move towards pain or we move away. I'm sorry, we move towards pleasure or away from pain. So, this is what I'm asking you to identify in your actions. Are you moving towards wholeness, the pleasure, or are you doing things to avoid feeling unworthy, moving away from the pain? Wholeness doesn't mean you don't care. It means that your care isn't codependent with your identity. You don't need to give 120% to be enough. You don't need to be the best, the brightest, and the busiest to be valid. You are allowed to be enough. Afternoon. um, so let's talk about the power of choosing done over perfect. And as I said earlier, this was like a big awakening for me in as I started my business. So many of us are stuck in the loops of overworking, um, rewriting things, rebranding ourselves, uh, keeping everything all in a nice package. But you're worthy of being seen, even if your work isn't polished, right? I used to spend hours trying to release things because I needed to make sure that it was all put together. Um, and to be honest, a lot of these times when I race to put out things, there's really things that people tended to pay more attention to. So done versus perfect. Done builds momentum. Perfect builds burnout. And you want results. You want clarity. You probably want income if you're working in your business, right? That comes from completion. Perfectionism often stops us from completing things. Every time you choose enough, you're training your nervous system that peace is safe. And that's where the freedom comes in. We have to learn how to rewire our nervous system, and that happens with action. So here are some scripts to say when your old pattern wants to drag you back into the loop of not being enough. It may not be perfect, but it's complete, and that's powerful. I'm choosing done so I can rest, not because I'm giving up, but because I'm giving myself back. I trust that I could create an alignment and it will land for those who it's meant to land for. Perfection isn't required, presence is. When you start saying these things out loud, you and in your body, you are teaching yourself something that your childhood never taught you. That you are safe even when you're not performing. You are allowed to rest even if there's more to do. And you're allowed to walk away from something incomplete without spiraling into shame. So let's take another moment to reflect on this. I want you to write this down and I want you to go back to it and ruminate on it some more, because this one will help you move forward if you can start identifying what project, task, or goal am I dragging out of fear that it's not good enough, when in reality it is already done. I remember when I wanted to start my first podcast, I sat on it for months because I thought I had to do one more thing. And I sat on it and I never released it. So the second time a podcast came up, an idea of a podcast came up, it was idea to launch within 6 weeks. And I did that because I wanted it done. It didn't have to be perfect. I had the opportunity to improve as I went on. So I want you to consider some of the things that you have been sitting on, thinking that, I need to do a little bit more here and a little bit more there, that you could probably move forward because it's already done. I want you to write it down. I want you to circle it. And then I want you to give yourself permission to go ahead and mark it as complete. So, in this last part, we're going to be talking about redefining worthiness in your own terms, on your own terms. So we've unlearned the hustle, right? We've stopped giving our piece away to perfectionism, and now we're landing in the deepest, most powerful piece of all, redefining worthiness. And again, we've talked about the awareness, we've talked about the reprogramming, and now we're talking about the reinvention, redefining worthiness for ourselves. Because let's be honest, most of us have never been taught how to feel worthy of just being. We were taught to earn it through achievement, through beauty, through being needed, through staying small. But today, I want you to meet the version of you that's done auditioning for worth. Let's shift the whole narrative and start over. You are not a brand. And while you may have a brand, a personal brand, you are not a brand. You are not a walking pitch deck. You are not here to be on time or on all the time. You're not a productivity machine. You're not here to prove your value um, in order to be loved, respected, or safe. Some of us have made healing a hustle. Our growth becomes our performance, our transformation, our campaign. But I want to tell you something, and it may feel uncomfortable. You don't need to be inspired to be valid. You don't need to consistently improve to deserve softness. You get to just be. So I want to ask you, when was the last time you let yourself exist without needing to explain why you deserved it? When was the last time? Oftentimes, we don't even know the answer to that. Your value is not in how much you produce or how many people approve or how perfect you play your role. Your value is innate. And that's period. There's no buts, howevers, or anything to continue that sentence. Your value is innate. It's all within. So I want you to do something. We're going to do something a little different. I want you to close your eyes unless you're driving. I am not out here trying to cause any accidents. And I want you to take a deep breath in and out. And I want you to imagine yourself sitting in a room, not performing, not fixing, not giving, not shrinking, just being, not trying to impress, not managing anyone else's emotions. You're not even anticipating needs. You're just breathing, just present, just who. And now in walks a version of you who knows without doubt that she is worthy. She doesn't wait for applause. She doesn't have to shape shift. She doesn't have to hustle for belonging. And she looks at you with a soft smile and she says, "You have always been enough. You, even when you couldn't see it." And I just want that to land with you. And I want you to ask that girl who walked in, what does life look like when I stop trying to earn what I already am? And when you're ready, I want you to open your eyes. And I want you to remember that that version that walked into the room, she lives inside of you, right? She's not your future self, someone that you have to work on to become. She is your truth. And she's been there the whole time. We often don't talk about how we have to protect that worthiness in the real world because this isn't something that we often talk about. This is a war against ill conditioning. And if you are someone who was raised, particularly me, I'm raised in a black household. My granny always told me, if you when you go into the workplace, you're gonna have to work twice as hard for half as much. You're gonna have to do this, and you're gonna have to do this, and you're gonna have to show up in so many other ways. So that that conditioning often made me feel like if I didn't tick these boxes, I wasn't worthy enough. But here's the truth. Sometimes protecting your peace means releasing what doesn't align. Stop doing all the things just because you think you need to do it. Sometimes it means revisiting the way that you show up. And sometimes that even means resting. Then we release that person who shows up when you shrink, that job that applauds your burnout, that friend that disappears when you start healing. You ask yourself, am I keeping this out of alignment or out of habit? Am I keeping this? What is the reason why I'm keeping this? And then that gives you the opportunity to revise your boundaries, right? You no longer have to explain, over explain. It allows you to revise your pace. You're allowed to do less and be effective. It allows you to revise your story. You're not the fixer, you're the force. And when you start making those shifts, it's important for you to ask what shift, what can shift so that it serves the version of me that I'm becoming. So that's when you learn how to rest. When you catch yourself spiraling into doing to prove. You rest when your body is screaming for stillness. When the world says go and your soul says breathe. Rest is resistance, rest is regulation, and rest is where your worthiness whispers, you don't need to earn me. So I have two more journal prompts for you. Um, the first one I want you to consider is, where in my life am I still trying to earn my worth? And what would shift if I believed I was already not enough? And I want you to pour into this, right? Like, I want you to be very uncensored, because your truth doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be yours. So, what I want to leave with you is that your worthiness is not something that you have to work your way into. It's not conditional, it's not circumstantial, it's not negotiable either. It's your birthright. You're not broken. You're just buried, and now you're just remembering, you know? Your power was never in getting it perfect. It was never in being polished. It was never in being palatable and proving your worth or carrying the weight of everybody else's expectations like a badge of honor. Your power is showing up anyway. When you have a shaky voice and sweaty hands and your heart is racing, but you're still standing and you're still choosing you in that moment because you are showing up authentically. And if you're sitting there like, damn, I've been surviving for a long time, I've been performing for a long time, that I forgot what it means to just be. That is why I created the Survival Mode Exodus membership, not just as a cute little group to drop affirmations and disappear, not as another place where you've got to put on your game face. It's a sanctuary. It's a soft landing for women like us who have survived survival mode and ready to start living. Inside the membership, we don't just talk about healing, we live it. You learn how to regulate your nervous system when the spiral hits, how to set boundaries that don't shake just because someone frowns at you or disapproves. We learn how to rewrite your beliefs so you're no longer needing validation to feel valuable. We go deep into identity reinventions, who you are without your mask, releasing generational patterns, rebuilding, building from a place of safety and not from someone's approval. So, what you get in that membership, we have monthly calls, we have theme challenges, and journal prompts. And it's a real community of women who won't clap for your survival, but they'll support you in exiting it. It's not just a membership. This is an entire movement of women who are no longer hiding behind the versions of themselves that they had to become in order to be loved. No, these are women who are no longer mistaking silence for peace, and who are ready to write their new stories. So, if this is something that you're interested in, drop freedom in the comments and I will definitely reach out. You can also scan the QR code, because the version of you who is done performing is waiting inside this membership. So that is it for this evening. We've talked about how to identify perfectionism, how to release that, how to move beyond and give yourself permission to show up as yourself. Next week, we will be going into numbing and how that shows up in our lives. I hope to be back to 6 p.m. The live at 6 p.m. GMT, 1 p.m. EST. But I'm also in the middle of recording season 3 of Survival Made Disrupted. So I may have to move the live around to accommodate some of my guests. But I will be back next week. We will be talking about numbing. Um, and I hope that you are finding these lives helpful. I hope that you walk away from these and really take the prompts that I give you and spend time working through that. As I've said before, the 3 phases of accident survival mode. The first one is awareness, and the point of these lives are to help you gain awareness in the areas that you can heal, and that is the purpose of those questions that I give you. So if you are working through the questions and something has come up for you, feel free to reach out to me, either on social media, or you can email me at info@letitiarenefrancis.com. So I will be back next week for another live, another way to help you really step into your self awareness and move yourself along. And if you really are ready to access survival mode, if you're ready to put down these patterns that are keeping you stuck, go ahead and join us in Survival Mode Exodus membership. So enjoy